Is there a common problem behind all reactionary Christians? Stick around for a video you do not want to miss that will answer this question.
You're watching Reason and Theology Live, a show dedicated to charitable discussions, debates, interviews, commentary, and analysis. The show concentrates on theological topics, historical matters, and philosophical problems with content ranging from introductory material to in-depth examinations. And now, your host, Michael Lofton.
You know, when I consider different individuals like Dyer, Taylor Marshall, Peter Dimond, Mike Gendron, Bryan Denlinger, among many, many others, I've noticed a common theme, a root problem behind all of them. And I want to express what that problem is. Today I prepared a PowerPoint presentation for you. You know, it's serious whenever I have a PowerPoint presentation. At least it's more structured when I have one. So I prepared one of those for you guys today. And I think it's going to illustrate what the root problem is among reactionary Christians. Obviously, there's different kinds. I'm not just talking about Catholics. However, I do want to focus more on different flavors that we find among Catholics and Catholic circles. But obviously, I mentioned there's some Orthodox and Protestants, and really this is a problem you can find outside of Christianity. But my, thing that I'm trying to do here with the channel is address Christian issues especially. So I'm going to focus on those. All right. I want to share my screen and enable audio because I do have some videos to go over when I pull up the PowerPoint here. All right. The root problem of reactionary Christianity. Here we go. What's the problem? Here's a description of the problem that I've noticed when I kind of look at, again, what do these people have in common? A person is presented with something that seems to conflict with their worldview. Rather than think through the issue critically by looking for ways to harmonize these two things, they will immediately resort to interpreting what they are confronted with through their preconceived biases. Let me give you an example. Here's a fun one that several people told me to check out, and I went ahead and checked it out, and wow, it really illustrates the point. Peter Dimond sees David Copperfield. David Copperfield was, again, that magician, very famous magician. He sees David Copperfield seemingly walk through the wall of China in a video, which we're going to watch here in a moment. He knows this conflicts with reason, but he doesn't ask how to harmonize what he sees Copperfield do with what he knows by reason. Instead, he immediately resorts to his preconceived bias. The magicians are empowered by the occult, and so he immediately assumes it is by the power of demons that Copperfield walked through the wall of China. Again, we're going to watch this here in a moment. So, actually, that's the next slide. So here it is. Magicians prove a spiritual world exists. Let's, well, why is it not letting me play it here? Well, tell you what, let me just pull it up directly since it's not letting me play it on the PowerPoint, but it's at the 23-minute, 41-second timestamp. Give me 1 second while I'll pull it up. Okay, here we go. And again, around 23 minutes and 41 seconds.
6 on the list are Chris Angel and David Blaine. They will be covered later.
Let me skip the ad here real quick. 1 second. Okay. So 23 minutes, 41 seconds. This will give you a perfect illustration. Was it 23 minutes? Yeah. There we go.
On this list is the magician Dante. He was considered a look.
Is that the famous
Maybe
Hindu
I have
rope?
the wrong timestamp. Let me find it real quick. There it is. we go. When I pulled up, I could have swore it was at the 23-minute timestamp. Oh well. All right, around 1838. Let's start there.
Miracles over the decades. Copperfield also walked through the Great Wall of China. During this event, the camera never cut away at any time. He did this in front of witnesses standing right above the wall. Before Copperfield decides to come out completely on the other side of the wall, he only puts his hands through the wall. He then puts his hands back into the wall. A short time after that, he decides to go completely through the wall. He is then congratulated by the witnesses who saw what he did. Here's an article that...
All right, and all throughout the video, and it's a very long 3.5-hour video full of Peter Dimond asserting that magician after magician after magician, including Copperfield, they're doing this by the power of the occult. It's the power of demons that enables them to do it. It's not just a trick. It's not a magic trick. It's not some kind of illusion. It's actually the power of demons. So, I mean, that's abundantly clear all throughout the video. Now, before we look at the solution to that one, let me give you another example that I've noticed where this problem plays out. Someone sees, and for example, Mors Laetitia, paragraph 297, that Pope Francis says, quote, "No one can be condemned forever because that is not the logic of the gospel," end quote. And this seemingly conflicts with the reality of hell. However, rather than looking for ways to harmonize these two things, they immediately resort to the preconceived bias against Pope Francis, or their preconceived bias against Pope Francis, which is the bias that he is not orthodox in his beliefs. They then conclude Pope Francis is denying the reality of hell. What's the solution? Generally speaking, the solution is when you come across something that seemingly conflicts with something else you know to be true, do not immediately interpret what you see through preconceived biases, but ask, is there a way the apparent conflict can be resolved without me resorting to a bias? Let's look at solution to example 1 where this is operative. This is actually in a video. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to play for me, so let me just pull it up again over here on YouTube. This is going to show you that there is a very logical way to explain what David Copperfield did without having resort to the demon empowerment bias. Let's watch it together. Going to play it at 1.5 times speed here, since it is about 9 minutes long. He's going to reproduce the same problem or the same trick as Copperfield, and then he's going to show you how to actually do the trick, which you should have probably already kind of been able to figure out by watching some of that video. But again, for those of y'all who thinks that, well, you know what it is it's demons empowering him. No, there's a logical explanation without having to resort to this kind of stuff. Let's watch the solution.
You know, there has to be an explanation. Heavy-duty shipping containers. Sometimes magicians walk through brick walls, landmarks, or even the 8th great wonder of the world. But we're not in China. So in the warehouse, these 5,000-pound steel containers will be just as great. The goal will be to walk. They're not made of mortar and stone like the wall in China, but steel is just as imposing. The magician sizes up his opponent.
All right,
He
so
climbs
same
back down,
problem.
allowing his assistants to lower some shades that are attached to the metal frame on the platform. These white curtains will protect the secret of his trick from prying eyes. But don't worry, he's bound to show you the secret sooner or later. The shade in the back has a hole that will allow a beam of light to shine onto the shade in front. Although the magician doesn't want you to see everything yet, he will allow the audience to see his shadow behind the shade. There is an identical setup on the opposite side of the containers. You'll see that in just a minute. It's been said that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, believed the great Houdini could dematerialize and pass through solid objects. Let's see if the magician can make believers out of us. Now that the assistants are done with their preparations, the magician prepares to take his place behind the shade. This is the last time we'll see him until he emerges on the other side, if he can. There we see a silhouette on the shade. He concentrates and then pushes his hand into the side of the solid steel containers. Now his other hand and his entire body. Is it possible that he's mastered Houdini's secret of dematerialization? It appears as though he's gone. But the doubters in our audience would probably like a little more proof. So, there you go. No shades, no magician. He's either vanished or traveling through the steel, particle by particle. The challenge now will be to reassemble on the other side. The camera is following his path through the stacked containers. Remember, the containers were examined and no trapdoors were found. On the other side, his assistants are placing a white fabric panel over a section of the metal. What's this? It appears as though the magician is poking his hands through the fabric, desperately trying to escape from the steel. Or is it Houdini, back from the grave? This is getting creepy. Better let him out of there. The panel is removed, but there's no sign of the magician. Even creepier. A shade is placed on the front of the platform, again to protect the secret of his rematerialization. Will he make it through the wall of steel? If he can't, somebody better have an industrial-sized can opener. Another sheet will complete the cube. As we can see, there are no shadows inside. No sign of the magician. Yet. The assistants have finished their work, and it's time for the magician to make his reappearance. Come on, masked man. Houdini did it. So can you. There he is. Slowly passing through the solid steel. I'm not sure about you, but I always knew he could do it. Then again, I've read the script. The shades are removed, and there's the magician, back from his trip through a great wall of steel.
Now they're going to show you how this is done. It's pretty simple. But rather than Googling this and just seeing a very easily accessible solution, Dimond just immediately resorts to the bias. It's demonic activity. In the same way that rather than just looking up a really simple answer to Amorsa Tizio, people immediately go to the preconceived bias. This is heterodox. Watch.
You know, there has to be an explanation. Here are the secrets. When the magician is showing us that the containers are real, he's not lying. They're genuine and solid steel. Therefore, he couldn't really pass through them as his shadow suggests. What you don't know is that a double is hidden beneath a trap door in the platform. As soon as the shade is in place, the double opens the trap and gets ready for his secret roll. We see the magician climb the stairs. The beam of light is focused to shine brightly on the shade, but allows a narrow place for the double to hide. When the magician steps into the fabric cube, he takes the double's place and the double steps forward. The switch is seamless, and the shadow appears to be the magician's. Meanwhile, he's busy slipping through another trapdoor and down into the stairs he used to climb up onto the platform. While we're looking at the shadow, we don't even notice his escape into the staircase. Once he's inside, he's ready to be wheeled to his final destination on the other side of the wall. Whenever magical assistants are wheeling stairs around, you can be sure someone's hiding inside. On the front of the shade, we see the shadow of the double appear to melt through the steel wall. From above, you can see the double's choreography as he mimes melting into the wall and then simply curls up into a ball where he won't be hit by the light. But from the front, it appears he's passing right through the steel. Next, he climbs back into his secret hiding place so that the cube is empty when the shades are removed. The audience believes the magician has melted into the steel wall, but his double is just hiding in the platform. Meanwhile, the staircase, with the magician hidden inside, has arrived on the other side of the wall. While he's making his way from the staircase into the platform, his assistants are distracting us with their own sleight of hand. Remember the cloth panel they held against the steel containers? When you look closely, you can see that only one of each assistant's arms is visible. That's because their other arms are hidden behind the panel, with their hands pushing on the fabric. The effect of the hands pushing on the fabric is so startling, the audience doesn't even stop to think it could be the assistant's hands and not the magician's. As soon as they get the signal that the magician is safely inside the platform, they remove the panel and attach the shades to the cube. When the shades are up, the magician climbs out of his hiding place and makes his way to a dark corner, carefully avoiding the beam of light. He holds up his arms and walks forward, creating the illusion that he is rematerializing, melting through this side of the steel containers. This is when some serious acting lessons would really pay off. Wall-to-wall magic. And now you know the secrets.
All right, there you go. So, pretty simple, right? But again, rather than just looking up the solution that I did in less than 5 minutes, although I kind of already figured out half of the trick just by watching it, but rather than just looking up a solution that you can find out in, again, a 5-minute Google search, one immediately resorts to the demonic charge. And the same thing applies, by the way, to the rest of the 3.5 hours of the video that Dimond shows, where there's some pretty impressive tricks. There really are. But there are also some very impressive solutions to them that doesn't require us to resort to demons, although he constantly does that throughout the video. Again, immediately resorting to preconceived biases rather than asking, how can I harmonize what I know to be true with what I am currently seeing or experiencing? Now, once again, to illustrate this in the theology realm, these same people do the exact same thing with theological matters. So just in the same way that we see this problem here with the magic issue, I see that same characteristic whenever these same people, reactionary Christians, approach theological questions. So, for example, Amor Laetitia, paragraph 297, seems to conflict with the reality of hell. So somebody immediately says, well, Pope Francis teaches heresy. Rather than just looking to the previous paragraph, paragraph 296, the immediate context. And the context makes it clear what is actually being said. It says, the Synod addressed various situations of weakness or imperfection. Here I would like to reiterate something I sought to make clear to the whole church, lest we take the wrong path. There are two ways of thinking which recur throughout the church's history: casting off and reinstating. The church's way, emphasis, the church's way, from the time of the Council of Jerusalem, has always been the way of Jesus, the way of mercy and reinstatement. The way of the church, emphasis, is not to condemn anyone forever. It is to pour out the balm of God's mercy on those who ask for it with a sincere heart. So whenever he is speaking about in the next paragraph, it's contrary to the gospel to condemn forever. He's talking about the church condemning someone forever, not God in hell. It doesn't address that issue. It's talking about the church in relation to the sinner. The church does make them the means of forgiveness available to them, and even will reduce their penance. For example, on their deathbed, even in the most severe penances in the early church, they would tend to reduce their penance and give them Holy Communion at least on their deathbed, even if they had like 20 years of penance left. That's what Pope Francis is talking about. The church, not God. So it has absolutely nothing to do with hell. It doesn't contradict hell. And it was really easy to find the solution. However, it's still repeated over and over and over and over and over today. But this is just one example among many. Now, let's talk about the development of a paradigm. This problem is at the heart of numerous issues among reactionary Christians, especially Catholics. This problem eventually forms an entire paradigm, a worldview, a way of thinking, so that everything they then encounter is filtered through this lens. Because they've bought into this way of thinking and they have seemingly encountered these problems and various issues that they've considered, like Amors Laetitia or whatever, it then starts to establish a way of thinking, a paradigm, a worldview. And they then, when they encounter new content, they interpret it through that biased lens. That already preconceived bias against Pope Francis is even more reinforced in light of their understanding of Amors Laetitia. Thus, every time Dimond, for example, sees a magic trick he can't figure out, he thinks it's by the power of demons that the magician does the trick. Likewise, everything that someone sees from Pope Francis or Vatican II that sounds off, they immediately interpret as heterodox. And the more they do this, the more they get established in that paradigm, and the harder it is for them to put that paradigm away. It's funny, we have someone in the live chat literally illustrating this problem as we speak. Now, when the paradigm is challenged, here's what happens. Generally, when the paradigm is challenged. This is why a reactionary Christian often falls or fails to engage challenges and instead chooses to react emotionally. That's what they do when the paradigm is challenged. They won't really address the issues for the most part intellectually or reasonably. They will tend to address it and react to it emotionally. When someone comes along and challenges their worldview, they'll resort to insults like, "You're just coping and seething. You're a liar. You are delusional. You're so stupid. You are evil." Fill in the blank. They'll choose something like this rather than allow themselves to be challenged on what led them to establishing their paradigm in the first place. So rather than asking, how did I end up formulating this paradigm? And did I buy into some things that I shouldn't have bought into? And should I not challenge myself here in light of this information? Rather than do that, they tend to just react, which is already the existing problem. They were reacting to begin with. Whenever they encountered a problem, they're going to react whenever you show a reasonable solution. Here's some examples. This can be seen when someone presents material challenging reactionaries on any of the following issues. The third secret of Fatima. It doesn't matter. Some reactionary Catholics, it doesn't matter how much data you show them and information you show them, they will still just react emotionally and won't really consider what you're saying. Not everybody. I'm just talking about generally here. Vatican II on salvation for non-Catholics. Oh, that's heresy. There's no way to harmonize that with Unum Sanctum or Florence. It's just automatically Lumen Gentium is heretical. Vatican II on religious liberty. Oh, there's no way to reconcile this with Leo or Gregory the 16th. It's just automatically going against tradition. Vatican II on ecumenism. Yeah, this idea of giving communion to the Orthodox, no way to reconcile that with anything in the preconciliar era. It's just all novelty. Pope Francis on the death penalty. Pope Francis, he's just changing everything. He thinks it's intrinsically evil, blah, 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 blah. Pachamama. Oh, this is idolatry. This is pagan worship in the Vatican gardens. Doesn't matter what you actually present to the person to challenge that worldview. Irrelevant. They're just going to say, you're delusional. You're stupid. How can you believe that? It's clearly this. It's blah, blah, blah. But they won't actually engage what you're saying. not in any meaningful fashion. They might present something else as a counterpoint, but then they won't ask, well, wait, is that counterpoint actually consistent with the solution I was presenting? Morse Laetitia, of course, another one. Oh, it teaches communion for divorce and remarriage, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter what you actually present to them. I did a whole presentation on the Morse Laetitia. It was mostly overlooked and ignored. People are still going to continue to present the same claims over and over. This is the problem with reactionary Catholicism. The conclusion is use the solution provided earlier when confronted with seemingly contradictory material. So in other words, instead of immediately just resorting to the discontinuity approach, immediately just saying there's a contradiction and then just pulling out one of your preconceived biases, instead of filtering things through that bias, ask, can I harmonize with what I'm seeing here with what I know to be true? Can I harmonize these things? Is that possible? Also, make a note of those who fail to use this solution, especially on YouTube, but also theologians who aren't on YouTube, authors, whatever. Make a note of those who are failing to use this kind of approach, but instead engage in rash judgments and automatically embrace their preconceived biases. Make a note of who those people are, and then take their claims with a grain of salt. A broken watch is right 2 times in 24 hours. They could say something that's true, but take it with a grain of salt, because odds are it's probably not entirely accurate, because they're not thinking critically. They're just immediately going to knee-jerk go to the preconceived biases. They're probably not working through these issues carefully. So again, mark out who those people are in your mind and take their claims with a grain of salt. Be critical. Think critically. Don't immediately buy into what they say. Maybe what they're saying is true, but it could very well not be true. Now, that is the root problem that I've noticed. I hope this was helpful to y'all. Let me know what you thought about it there in the comment section if you do find this to be a root problem that you've noticed, a recurring theme among various reactionaries. And then again, in the future, now that I've really pointed it out, I want you to start paying attention to and verify, are people actually doing this? Pay attention to their argumentation and see if you can actually notice it in action in their content. All right, anyways, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and lastly, check me out at patreon.com/reason and theology if you want to support me. See you later. God bless.